Hello, welcome to Silent Generation. I'm Joseph.
I'm Nathan.
And this week's topic is Yuppies. So we'll be going through the kind of origin and coining of the phrase back in the 80s, its meaning then, and the usefulness and kind of modern state of the Yuppie as it pertains to today.
And so the term Yuppie, we're going to get to where it came from and who it described. But I think an even more interesting starting point is talking about Yuppies when they were children. So there's a very popular book from the author Christopher Lasch called The Culture of Narcissism. It's been popularized over the past few years by Red Scare. They cite it quite a lot. Have you ever read part of it or read up on it?
No, I should read more than just like blurbs about it and stuff. I feel like it was in my house. I don't know. My family had a lot of books. It just seems like seeing the font of it seems very familiar to me for some reason. But it's a very like 70s serif font cover type of look.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't familiar with it until a few years ago. But within the book, he explains how what became Yuppies were very poorly raised. So traits like pleasure seeking were instilled in baby boomer children by permissive parents. And in the book, he describes how different age cohorts develop and collectively express pathological behavior. So for example, for the silent generation, it was OCD behavior due to the suppression of sexual desire. Whereas for baby boomers, it was narcissism due to the hedonistic pursuit of sex, power, and money. And so Yuppies showed how never-ending narcissism is, as they had successful careers that never satisfied them. No promotion or salary increase was ever really enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's always what comes up as people describe Yuppies is like this endless, like bottomless kind of greed and careerism, basically. It's interesting to apply that to the silent generation, like OCD tendencies. I think I have kind of observed that in my grandparents. Even though they didn't directly grow up in the Great Depression, I think this is a very like known cultural thing in America. Like, oh, if someone lived through the Depression, they keep all of those little traits from it, all like the money saving and things like that. And I think it's a truism because it's true. Like that is, I think people do get those baked into them. But yeah, Culture of Narcissism. Yeah, it's definitely like directed at the baby boomers, but it was a big book when it came out as well. He like met with Jimmy Carter actually to like, I don't know, parts of the book were kind of used in the speech that Jimmy Carter gave about like, I don't know, the direction of America, basically.
Yeah, and what's important to know is that he wasn't talking about narcissism in like a euphemistic sense of everyone's greedy, we need to be conscientious of that and tone it down. Instead, he meant quite literally in the pathological sense. These are people that need clinical help and it's society-wide. Like not everyone, of course, was a narcissist in the 80s. It wasn't literally everyone, but there was an influx of way too many people that were just self-centered beyond a normal degree. And it's not curable. It's like if these people in their like formative years. No, I mean, I can even kind of speak from experience just in my very large family. It's like the boomers were in many cases like pretty selfish and kind of screwed up with their kids, and their children are more responsible than they are in many ways. And this isn't like the case for everyone. I know like a lot of people have backgrounds that were like less chaotic than mine was, but it wasn't just my parents. My dad actually was like very responsible compared to other baby boomers in my family, but like some of the others are just like, I feel like they get frozen in time in a way where like the period of time where they were the most elevated in society or had the most success, they get stuck in it.
Yeah. 100%.
It's like they had a failed career, but they're just stuck introducing themselves as that person they used to be.
Mm-hmm. My parents, because my mom is a very young baby boomer, and then my dad would have been a very old Gen Xer. They're both kind of on the cusp. I asked my mom if she saw herself as a yuppie, and she had dropped out of college and she was working in offices like downtown in Chicago, but kind of as like a, office manager, kind of light secretarial role. And so she said she worked for Yuppies, but she wouldn't really see herself as one. And then my dad was just kind of in school the whole time and became a doctor. But
yeah. No, I think my dad was definitely more 70s in like a raunchy way, which actually is something that I think the Yuppies identified with. Like you could just read everywhere. It's like, oh, they were obsessed with sex or they were just hedonistic. But
yeah, just like hot tubs, leisure suits, water beds, that kind of like low grade 70s sexuality. Yeah. And very different from like the free love type of 60s sexuality, there was like a capitalist element to it, you know?
It was about performance.
Yeah, it was another thing to acquire.
There's this writer, Catherine Liu, who's alive today. She recently published this book on the professional managerial class, but she talks within it how for PMC people, which I think can be a parallel to Yuppies, or they're the people that we describe as Yuppies.
Yeah, the professional managerial class, yeah.
Yeah, she talks about how they are marketed sexuality in a performance way. Like, this is why there's Silicon Valley startups for like sperm equality, or why there's, people who aren't even older are taking erectile dysfunction medication. It's all about performance.
Very slick ads for those. Yeah. And they've always used the term performance with that because it's like such a safe word to use, and you can like publish it and stuff. But yeah, it's just like the same way you go to the gym, you want to also get medicine that helps you keep an erection and all that. It's, yeah, it just like fits into the grander kind of like health consciousness that really started with the Yuppies. But so
there's a chapter in the Culture of Narcissism on wellness culture that parallels what I see today with like self-care and self-help so
clean
much.
Girl aesthetics and all that.
But yeah, I think that we still live amongst boomers, but also younger generations. Many of them were raised in ways that also caused them to develop narcissistic behavior. But it's like, I think we are transitioning away from this a bit. The peak of it was boomers and Yuppies. This was like peak narcissism. But I do think we still live amongst people who, like, I have peers, I'm sure, that like are narcissists. And it's easier to see because of social media. Like, you can pinpoint narcissistic behavior more easily than before. Yeah. But I think there's less of them than there were in the 80s.
Yeah. I don't know. At least performatively, it feels like generations now are, if anything, sometimes hyper concerned about the well-being of others, like an opposite of narcissism. Like that famous, like, was that article in the Washington Post, or what was it on, where it was like, I don't know how to tell you to care about other people. Like that kind of article, which was, it was written in COVID, and it was written in this kind of like, in this very strict tone, just saying that like, you know, people, like there's two types of people in America. There's those who care deeply about others, and there's those who don't. And I'm tired of like playing to those people and trying to convince them of those traits. And it was very caught up in the political things of 2020, but I don't know. I think that the fact that was a popular article speaks to at least the values that people would like to have. We want to be seen as anti-narcissists.
Yeah. Apparently the political beliefs, as at least according to an article you put right in the beginning, the political distinctiveness of young professionals, Yuppies in the new class. Apparently, like, this was written in 1990, towards when Yuppies, the term Yuppie phased out of culture. But like, they were perceived as being socially liberal, fiscally conservative. So they still had that like, oh, I care about the world ethos a bit. But yeah, it's definitely like, now people I think care more about others than themselves in a lot of ways.
I think so.
But no, it's too big of a topic for me to address. Like, I'm not Christopher Lasch. I do feel like my generation's different. And we might get into this a bit when we do an episode soon on like millennial nihilism. That's just a theory. I think it's part of the puzzle. I don't think that's the overarching pathology of my age cohort, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that's like the origins of where this, generation comes from, as they were coming into adulthood and starting their careers. And so the term Yuppie, like, there's, in terms of using it in print, everyone points back to this one article in Chicago Magazine from 1980, written by Dan Rottenberg. And the article it's really interesting to go back. It's very Chicago specific, as you can guess from the magazine, but it's titled "About That Urban Renaissance, There's Been a Delay." And it was basically him writing about the perceived narrative at the time was that like, oh, there's this new class of people who are moving into cities. They're eschewing like suburbanization. And then he just kind of like goes boots on the ground. He tries to find people who fit that demographic and interview them and see their motivations. And I think, you and I talked about this before the episode, of just, it came out a lot more urbanist than we thought it was going to be. We thought this was going to be like a more fashion-y topic and stuff about like slicked back hair and Armani suits. But, so yeah, Dan Rottenberg first used this in print, but he was looking at Chicago at a time where like the effects of suburbanization were really being felt. Downtown was being turned into a machine that just took cars from the suburbs full of people and took them to high-rise office buildings, and like saw that as the most useful tax base. And for living situations in Chicago, you'd either buy a home in the suburbs or you'd get a high-rise condo like right against the lake. There wasn't really like a perception of other neighborhoods as being a nice upper middle class place to live for professionals.
Yeah, the author, he was so much more aware of the changes happening in the city than I give credit to people of the time for being able to see it, because if you're living in something, it's always hard to like notice what's going on. But, you know, I did find a retrospective on Yuppies from Chicago Magazine where they interview Dan Rodenberg, you know, many years after he thought of this.
35 years after.
He's so wise, you know, like there's so many observations.
I was really blown away by that interview. So after, I forget when he left Chicago, but he basically decamped to Philadelphia and like raised his kids there after they went to school for a little bit in Chicago. So he's really more of a Philadelphia guy as he kind of looks back on his life. Yeah. He had a lot of curiosity about Chicago. He wanted to know like what trends are still continuing, what was the state of certain places and neighborhoods. But so young up-and-comer or young urban professional, those are both used interchangeably. It probably comes like as a corruption from, hippies would be the oldest term, you know, and then Yippies, or the Youth International Party, they were called Yippies, and then Yuppies probably morphed out of that. He insists, Dan Rottenberg, he didn't coin it, he was just the first to use it in print, basically.
One of the observations he made in that retrospective article that I found really interesting was when he said like, wow, like people started to want to live 2 miles from downtown. It's like, what?
Yeah, it all seems so like obvious to us now. Like, I don't know. It's and he kind of, so he looks at that situation, the binary choice that Chicago was giving its citizens at the time, and he's like, well, there's this small contingent of people who are moving into these like unthinkable neighborhoods like Wicker Park and Andersonville, and they're fixing up like, you know, old 2-flats and single family homes. He's like, maybe this is the future. And it totally was. Like he was just, he was observing something as it was happening. Basically, like all the prosperity used to be pressed up against the lake. And then it kind of, I would describe it as like the hand of a clock going backwards, basically, where it fanned out and then eventually jumped the river. And then neighborhoods across the river became nice and desirable. And we'll see how far the clock goes.
Yeah, that's the case for like the wealthiest residents. But at the same time, there was a hollowing out of the middle class in Chicago where like a lot of areas that were just standard and middle class became impoverished. So there were two things kind of happening at the same time. But
this one bar in Chicago, just the way we think about like the suburban life cycle in Chicago of you're young in the city, in an apartment, maybe a condo, and then you find someone and you go out to the suburbs. This one like Irish pub has on their website, Glasscott's is one of the oldest bars in the area, over which time it has acquired a reputation for being the place where hundreds, if not thousands, of couples have hooked up or had their first date, leading to marriage and the inevitable move to the suburbs. That's just like so enshrined as just like the way that you're supposed to do it in Chicago. And so I don't know, like the young couples I know who are staying in the city, I think they feel like they're still like fighting, you know, they're like bucking a trend basically. People do ask them like, oh, so when does the suburbs happen for you guys?
I mean, I think that for many people, they're used to narratives about cities in other parts of the country that just don't apply here. Like here you have the choice between city or the suburbs. They're both well priced. You can make it work regardless of how much money you're making. And then the other thing too is like, you know, there is still this like, we have vast swaths of the city that are kind of stuck in the same place they were like 40, 50 years ago. It's like, we're not gentrified citywide, basically.
That's what, I forget what article called it, but they said Chicago is 1/3 San Francisco, 2/3 Detroit. Yeah. Basically.
Or 1/3 Manhattan.
Oh, yeah. It could be that too. Yeah. And that's like, I don't know, for Yuppies, it's cool that Chicago gets the kind of be the epicenter of that. But really, New York and LA had their own flavor of Yuppie as well. All three of them would have been involved in, you know, finance stuff. Maybe the LA Yuppie would have been, you know, in management or agency or something like that. But yeah, it was just very, I guess we can hop into like Yuppie aesthetics and everything of like, it got pretty, so starting in 1980 with the coining of it there, it seems like Yuppies kind of reached their zenith in like the cultural conversation, basically leading up until the crash of 87. And so there was always talked about in like news things. You can find these like newsreels about Yuppies. There was like a Yuppie prom, basically, that was very like tongue in cheek.
I think it was called the Yuppie Cotillion.
Yeah. But yeah, they like, one of the things associated with Yuppies is white wine and brie. I was just like, that seems like a very average thing nowadays. Like, I think everyone kind of likes white wine. Not everyone likes brie.
I don't like either of those things. But
but yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of Yuppie aesthetics, they're visually very distinct. I made a Pinterest board for this week. It's going to be in the link. It's going to be a link for the episode description. And it kind of is a uniform in a way. I mean, it really is. It's like you see one, you kind of feel like you see them all, even though I can't even I don't have the vocabulary like you probably do for like the cuts of suits to be able to identify like what makes this a Yuppie suit versus just like a 1980s suit or things like that. But yeah, I do recommend as part of this episode, let listeners check that out. It's just a bunch of handsome men and beautiful women.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff we have are like, photography from fashion ads and stuff like that from the era. But for men, it was, they always say the 80s was the era of big hair. And like for men, it was definitely slicked back hair, a lot of volume. I'm lightly growing out my hair right now. And actually like the Pinterest board, I was like, damn, I could actually use some of this as inspiration. Like, I don't know. But
you don't want to actually look like Draco Malfoy.
I don't. The problem is volume, I think, because my hair doesn't really stand up too much. If it is slicked back, I do look like Draco Malfoy or one of the Trump sons.
Yeah.
But yeah, which is always unfortunate.
That's like the flop version. They look so bad.
It's like they're getting further from the source. Yeah.
But yeah, for listeners on my Discord server, there's this picture is of Draco Malfoy. Do you want to explain?
I just think that I think it's just funny. I don't know. In terms of like other blonde men in media, my choices are like Macaulay Culkin and the Home Alone kid who have been compared to by drunk adults at a baseball game once. They yelled at me, "Make the face, Macaulay Culkin." But yeah, and then Draco Malfoy.
Yeah. That's nicer than when people in the past have said it. I looked like serial killers. I don't like that. Yeah.
Well, when the Dahmer show came out, I got a few comparisons to that.
You don't look like him. I wear glasses, so like I guess it's reasonable.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, actually, today someone at the library said I looked like Clark Kent. She came in right away, and I guess I helped her before. I kind of forgot, but she came in and she was like, "Oh, you helped me before. You look like Clark Kent." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And then I went with her to the computer to help her or something. And then the person we sat next to was like, "Actually, you look like Peter Parker in Spider-Man."
That's good.
And she was like, "You're just so bashful." I was like, "How do these people? I don't even recognize."
These are some wild reads people are just tossing out. But I would say you're pretty bashful. Yeah. So with Yuppie suiting and stuff, it was like very boxy and wider fits, and not in the 70s bell bottom type of way. And Italian brands were seen as a very much a status thing. Armani was huge. Yeah, so Italian fits are always going to be a little more built up in the shoulders, basically, and boxy in that way. But there was just a very generous drape to the clothing of the period. Sometimes it gets like with any fashion trend, there's like the most exaggerated example of it. And you'll see these like just giant pants is what I'd say, with like a skinny little leather belt that's like almost too small for the belt loops. And then they got a big billowy shirt that's like squeezed into that and has tons of folds of free fabric. Looks very cozy is one thing I'll say suiting wise. Yeah,
the pictures of the men on our Pinterest board, they look more layered than I think what I see from the 60s. It's more reminiscent to me of like, say, the 20s or 30s or something. And in a lot of those pictures, not a lot, but like in a few of those pictures, the men have like hands on their hips in this way that I don't think I've seen in any other decade.
Yeah, they're like they're sinking in their chests a little bit. They're like hunching over, and there's like, I don't know, they have their hands, I think there's the masculine way and the feminine way to put your hands on your hips, right? And
I need to learn this. Tell me.
It's all about thumb placement. I'm trying to think. Thumb behind or thumb forward? One of those is male. One of them is not. I don't know. I don't make the rules. I'm trying to think of other clothing things with Yuppies. Yeah. So the banker shirt is like the blue and white striped like body, like front of the dress shirt, and then it'll have like a white collar on it. So that was seen as very like specifically like Wall Street banker type of look.
Wait, but I don't actually know this. Is it a t-shirt or a long sleeve shirt?
No, this is a dress shirt. This is a like button up shirt. Yeah. But it has like like the different colored collar from the body just became known as like the banker thing.
Oh, I really like that actually.
Yeah. That's what Michael Douglas wears in Wall Street.
Yeah.
Suspenders and braces had kind of a thing. So those like, it's a part of fashion, but it's not really supposed to be a scene part of fashion, unless you take your jacket off. But I think that's like, it helped, I think maybe with the like heavy weight of some of these materials, I'd say, instead of keeping them up with a belt.
Yeah, the belt, as you mentioned, was too thin to really do anything. Yeah. Another thing I mentioned were just like cable knit sweaters / sweater vests, which I thought might be like a status symbol just because they're hard to keep clean, and it might be, like the only place you could really wear white cotton sweaters would be an office where it would never get dirty.
Yeah.
But you were saying it's kind of an orphan garment, right?
Yeah. So sweater vests, like, I think there actually is a good point to them, and I've like come dangerously close to buying them. Actually, I think if you're wearing one, you shouldn't take your jacket off. Like, it's great because with a suit that you might wear in like milder fall days, like as you get into winter, you can just add another layer of warmth without like messing up with the sleeves, basically. Because like I'll sometimes wear like a thin merino wool crew neck like sweater over a dress shirt and tie, but things get a little tight in the arms, basically, like once you add like 2 layers inside there. But so sweater vests exist for a reason. They just, I don't know, they've just become the ultimate like sexless like band teacher type of garment is how I describe it.
Or male librarian. Actually, the stereotype of a male librarian, that's their like signature piece. I don't own any. There's very few days of the year here where like I get to wear stuff that's like for 60-degree weather.
I always say that in Chicago. Yeah, it's like, this is not a city for light jackets. It's like either big jacket or no jacket, it feels. But I think that's like, I don't know. I kind of am grateful for that. And we've had a lot of that weather this year, so I've gotten to like wear that.
I don't know. I haven't even gotten to wear my like, I have like a few jackets that like I really only get to wear a few days a year, which thankfully they're statement pieces, but like, I wish I could wear that stuff more often. I do think like San Francisco weather, I actually like it more than anywhere else I've ever been. Like if I could wear stuff that was a bit heavier weight, I'd feel like better, I think. Because right now I'm like, say, in a t-shirt. That's because I worked out earlier. But I feel like I wear t-shirts too often. Like just throughout the year, I'm kind of tired of them.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I'm like, I don't often wear just like a t-shirt. I don't know. There's like more out there. It's just, it's the most standard garment. You got to pivot lightly from it.
And for the phrase you used, orphan garments, I in turn coined my own phrase, vestigial garments.
I think vestigial garment makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to think of like a second example of something like that that we keep around, even though it's lost its original purpose.
Because, like when something's vestigial, it usually shrinks away into nothing. And hats in American culture are sort of like that, where like in the 70s episode, we realized that like the newsboy cap is like the flattest hat you could have.
The least hat.
Yeah. And then, in the 60s, Jackie Kennedy was known for like wearing hats only out of formality as the president's wife. She really wouldn't have worn them otherwise. And like they were as tiny as they could be. They were just little dumb drops, basically.
Yeah. I think we talked about this in the 70s, in the 60s episode, and we talked about like men's hats did a similar thing where like as they became kind of annoying to deal with getting in and out of a car, like hats shrunk. The final hat was kind of the trilby, basically, which was just always a smaller hat, but then guys were more drawn to it because it was like the least cumbersome. And then after that, it went no hat. And then this trilby sadly survives as like when people picture fedora guys, they're really picturing a trilby, actually. So there's no saving that hat, basically. Even in the scenes in Mad Men, Roger will wear a trilby versus I think Don Draper wears more of a fedora, but it looks wrong. Even though it's all in the environment, everything else is right. They're wearing big heavy coats and he puts on the trilby, it just looks wrong. Basically.
I don't think in a single one of our pictures for Yuppies, any of them wore hats.
No.
Ever.
It was all about the hair. It was all about showing off your like luscious, greased back hair.
Yeah.
I think.
Because I think for men, it's easy to have good hair. I mean, for me, I really like short hair on men. And then if they grow it out a bit, though, it's an extra step for grooming. And it shows off your health. Like I can see it from that angle, but I pretty much only like crew cuts and then buzz cuts sometimes. Like those are the only 2 haircuts I really like.
Yeah, I was doing the short on the sides thing for a long time, but I don't know. I was told by a good friend that it comes off as a little bit severe. Basically,
severe is great.
That's what I was saying. I was like, I think I am a little bit severe. So like, I don't want to let people know that let people think I'm laid back or anything. Yeah. And then tanning was a big thing for Yuppies starting around then. So the LA Tan logo, I'm very drawn to it. You see them in like anywhere, like not just in the city, like they're also in
anytime I
suburbs.
see one and it's not shut down, I'm like, who is doing this still?
It's just, it's, I had a friend whose ex like worked at a Hooters and an LA Tan. Those were her two jobs. And I was like, and he's a very smart guy.
She sounds
he
like
listens
fun.
to the podcast too, so he's gonna know who I'm talking about. But I just think that I think he was probably will laugh at that too. But it's like, what a type. To be like, oh God, clocking out at LA Tan. All right, time to get into my Hooters girl outfit.
My very first boyfriend in high school came from like a well put together family where actually he was related to the Kennedys to a degree, and he was talking about how like one of his relatives adopted a daughter, and like she was like the black sheep of the family, and everyone talked about her all the time because she destroyed her life by becoming the manager of 4 LA Tans at the same time. And then she just trashed her skin. And so everyone would always talk about her behind her back and be like, why is she just a manager of only 4 locations? Like,
that's so wild. And it is one of those things where like, if you're around the tanning all the time, like of course you're going to tan and you're going to do it more than the average person. And like, that's why I say like why hairdressers often have bad hair is, they're just like around it and they're thinking about it too much, and that can be bad if you're only focused on that.
Yeah. But wait, so for Yuppies in the 80s, were LA Tans available, or how are they doing?
Yeah, they started then. So that's like another thing, like on the logo of LA Tan and all that very fluorescent 80s, 90s thing was happening at the same time as the Yuppie thing.
Yeah.
Like if you look at our Pinterest board, it's all these like very like somber, sober colors, a lot of like beautiful wools. But I imagine that like a Yuppie guy would change out of that and get into a like fluorescent jogging outfit. I think there was a very large divide between sportswear and business wear, which is of course totally collapsed nowadays as like,
thing.
Patagonia vests and athleisure at work and Lululemon pants and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But on the Yuppies tanning thing, you writing that in the docket made me realize that Trump is definitely technically a Yuppie.
He was king of the Yuppies basically. Like that was, you're saying that people get frozen in the period where they like achieve the most power. And even though Trump achieved the most power in 2016, like he reached his first like cultural power in the 80s. He became the symbol of like, even though he's I think too old to be like.
That's the thing is like, okay, he might be
he was in his
slightly outside of the demographic range.
He wasn't young. He was an elder Yuppie.
Yeah, but I found this think piece from the Washington Post from 2019 titled How the Biggest Yuppie of the 1980s Became the White Working Class's President, where the author wrote that, in hindsight, the brief heyday of the Yuppie actually represented the birth of Trumpism, hedonism, financial recklessness, and contempt for tradition. These values veered far from the nostalgic small-town values Reagan liked to evoke in his signature anecdotes. Nor did Yuppies embrace the fiscal discipline and hawkish foreign policy that Reagan preached religiously. And so I don't like that they used the term Trumpism, whatever. But no, I do think that like, while he was too old to really be classified as a Yuppie, he truly embodied the urban /elite /luxury lifestyle Yuppies were aspiring to. Mm-hmm. And also another thing, that Art of the Deal was definitely popular amongst all of these people.
Yeah, all the climbers of that area. Yeah, and I sent you over this like satirical music video made in I think it's like 88 or 89.
I did watch it.
You did watch it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Yuppie rap, and it was made by this guy. The person who posted on YouTube is actually the original like maker of it, basically. So he gives a brief history of it, like just he and his friend. I don't know how they got all this money together because it looks like a very professional music video, but it's just them reciting all the like classic Yuppie things set to like a very like late 80s kind of hip hop beat. And they talk about like the tanning and all that, and they have like posters of Ronald Reagan up. Like they just kind of touch on all these things. And Donald Trump as well is featured in that. He holds up the Art of the Deal. And they talk about things like power suits and power ties and all that. And like Trump is also in a lot of ways fashion wise stuck in that period as well too.
Yeah. And mentioning Reagan, that does make me think about I don't even remember which NymFed alumni episode it was, but they talked about how Reagan ushered in this fascination with like formal wear when he became president, because JFK was younger and like he looks more 60s, it's brighter. Mm-hmm. And this sort of made people at the time, young people, want to be older, which is a rare moment in US culture because I think in general, people in the US like have always wanted to be young forever to a degree.
Yeah. No, we'd like...
Although actually, no, not really. Because as Christopher Lasch described in the Culture of Narcissism, narcissists always have a fear of death.
Yeah.
It like really consumes them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that in, I don't know, I forget where I originally read this. Someone's like, America has what appears to be an obsession with youth, but it's actually just an obsession with death. And then, so that's like what motivates it. It's not any love of youth. It's just like a fear of death situation.
Yeah.
But
fear of aging is, they're both so intertwined. I don't think they can really be separated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't know, we're talking about hair and all that. And like Trump's hair is famous, whatever, but him, like, you know, the descriptions of people behind the scenes who have like actually seen it and all that, it's an extensive series of hair grafts basically. That's just very generously pushed forward. I've heard it's all entirely his hair, but it is him holding on to that, like him trying to do the 80s yuppie look, like in fighting biology and aging and all these things, using all this science and surgery, all these things to just try and hold on to what he had. But
yeah, it always fascinates me, like how much of men's grooming is just for others. It seems like brushing your teeth, showering, it's just about other people smelling it. It's not even about you taking care of yourself. At least that's what I observe a lot of the time.
I don't know. I like have like nice shaving equipment and all that.
Not
kind
you.
of stuff.
You like you take care of yourself.
I just think that these rituals are like nice.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, then let's talk about women's yuppies.
Oh yeah, I didn't write anything in this. But the thing is, I do like the look a lot. I do like women. I do like women in the 80s.
Yeah, I feel like they'd intimidate me for sure.
Yeah, I like to be intimidated.
I don't like women, but I actually do get nervous sometimes when no, I get nervous when
I'm a big women guy.
No, I feel nervous sometimes around them occasionally when I feel like they think I like them. I still get that feeling occasionally where I feel like they're perceiving me as someone to be wary of. But
are you sure?
No, I do feel that sometimes. It makes me nervous. But okay, so one of the characteristics of yuppie women's fashion was shoulder pads. So as someone who isn't in an office environment, I can't really spot differences in like office clothing from decade to decade, but this one is so distinct, like you can't miss it.
Yeah. They talked about this on Infed Alumni, but yeah, it's out of this, like, as women entered the workforce, they had to do it with like a kind of over-exaggerated bravado, basically. Like it's not enough that they are like just wearing a suit, already a masculine thing. That suit has to have like structure and shoulders and like heighten the masculine, basically. But they would have these very snatched waists. Am I saying that right? It just feels like a very gay coded thing.
Corseted.
Yeah, but
that might be a way to say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, my favorite example of like an 80s blazer, which this isn't really a Yuppies thing, but I assume you've seen Black Mirror.
Yeah, I've seen 2 episodes, and the San Junipero episode was one of the 2 I've seen. So
yeah, in that episode, one of the characters wears this like purple 80s blazer that's just like the most 80s thing I've ever seen. I love it.
No, yeah, they had just wild. I think women were able to like have more fun with color. That's often the case. Yeah, than men were in this period. But men, like with color and crazy patterns, though it wasn't on the suit fabric itself, it was on the tie. When I was at my grandparents', like they had this gigantic rack of ties because my grandpa wore a tie every single day for his like 40-year career as a guidance counselor. And I was pulling out all the ones from the 60s and early 70s that I liked. And then a lot of the ones in the 80s and 90s were just insane. Like I think maybe printing technology got better so they could do different, interesting designs, but they were all pretty bad. The only one I pulled from that period was a red and blue paisley one. And like looking at our Pinterest thing, paisley ties were very wide. Paisley ties were a big thing then.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this, the American perspective on color, how we love to kind of constrain it and rein it in. Like it should be a pop of color. We can't have a whole like wall or whole room be one color. And I think the tie is a reflection of that. We want to push it into a corner and control it.
Yeah. There are people who do break that, mostly youth. But yeah, within office environments, in order to be taken seriously, you have to like restrict your color scheme, because presenting yourself more seriously makes them take you more seriously. But yeah, and then the only other thing we wrote for like like trends we see within yuppie women's fashion is just big earrings.
Yeah.
I didn't even find information on this online. But yeah, it's like, I feel like that might have been a thing just because the more material it takes to make an earring, the more expensive it is. It's kind of like a one-to-one
It's a flex. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. I think nowadays things are, from what I've seen of women's jewelry, there's just such a daintiness now, like a fineness to everything.
Yeah.
I bought a gold necklace for a past girlfriend of mine, and I wanted to get it like solid gold, and it was, but it's just a very small chain.
Yeah.
But I think that's like a quality over quantity kind of thing of like, it might be a very thin, fine chain, but it is at least 100% gold and not vermeil.
Yeah, that's one thing that like I know exactly what you're talking about because I worked for a jewelry company on Jewelers Row for a bit called Le Kaiser, and it was very popular with like people who are into rose gold and into like that like very millennial pink, millennial gray, even the millennial white, you know, in a Kim Kardashian way thing. But her stuff was like always like very thin. It like it's good for Instagram, you know, but like when you have cameras that are farther away, you need bigger jewelry. So that might have been like a reason why bigger earrings were a thing in the 80s because people weren't taking selfies.
Quality. Yeah.
The smaller stuff only works for like very intimate shots.
Yeah. No. Yeah, do we want to hop into interior design?
Sure. I didn't write anything for this, but
this is just like, so interiors where I'd say it's still pretty modern. I mean, in these urban environments, people were living in these new build high rises and stuff. And so the Patrick Bateman apartment from American Psycho is, I think, a very good, you know, set design. It really captures the period. Simplistic, white, like black leather furniture, white rugs, very monochrome. I think that kind of the like contemporary style that's seen in luxury nowadays, I think owes its origins to this. In our company, it's kind of funny when we tear stuff out from the 80s and this period. Sometimes I'd say more so we're tearing out things from the 90s where it's very warm toned, and then we're replacing it with a lot of cooler tones, basically. Yeah. But the 80s was, I think, interiors, I would say it's cooler toned. There was a lot of glass blocks sometimes, which you were anti-glass block, but I think I've opened your eyes lightly to glass blocks.
They're okay. I think they're a good design element when they were part of the original design. But if you say replace like a single window in your house with glass blocks, that just never looks nice.
Yeah, no. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It has to be floor to ceiling. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, this was also like, I guess 90s was more like postmodern interiors. We get the really zany Memphis movement kind of stuff. Another good, I guess, interior design thing is in Beetlejuice, when those people take over the house and they get rid of all the Victorian stuff and they do it in a very 80s contemporary style. That would be like the audience and like watching the movie contemporarily in there would have been like, yeah, that sucks. That's what Yuppies do once they get a nice old place. They like put that stuff in there.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then I also have a brief little obsession with like mid 80s industrial design. I think it was very good. So for Yuppies, a big status symbol was the BMW. I mean, other cars are still...
I have never understood why people associate the brand with luxury because the name is so generic. BMW, whatever.
Yeah, it's... I don't know. I think for people then, like, yeah, they're expensive. There's I'm explaining this to you because you admit to knowing nothing about cars, basically. But BMWs would be seen as more sporty than Mercedes. Mercedes still, of course, makes fast, sporty cars and all that, and they have a great racing lineage and all that, but BMW sells its performance more so. But yeah, another...
Have you ever heard the phrase, I would rather cry in a BMW than be happy on a bicycle?
No, that's
it was
really
something
good.
That was said on like a Chinese reality TV show.
Oh my God.
But yeah, BMWs are still associated with wealth. I do know that.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
In the Yuppie rap video, he name drops a Saab, which is like a Swedish car. They get associated with Volvos a lot because it's the other Swedish car brand. But Saabs are also, I think those are seen as kind of like if you were a creative Yuppie, basically, or like an architect or something, a little bit outside of the financial, you'd have like a Saab or a Volvo to show that you're a thinking man, basically. And I associate all these cars as being black. I picture a lot of like consumer goods and electronics as being black in this period. I kind of like made this weird list of things that are all designed in the mid 80s that look very similar to me. One of them is the BMW 8 Series E31. I love this car. It's a 2-door coupe. They put a crazy huge engine in it. One cool thing about it is it's missing its B pillars, which are the pillars like basically behind you in the driver's seat. So it has this very open feeling from front to back. I just think it's a very like slick, like taut car. Like it's not boxy like the 80s, and it's not bulbous like things are now. It's just very skinny. The logo and the grille is very small on it. And BMW grills have gotten larger and larger. And then I think 2 years ago when they did an aesthetic refresh, they just blew them out of the water. They're just gigantic. They're like 20 inches tall. They look like I don't know, just a nostril, basically giant nostrils. Like if you push your own nose up, it looks like that. I think that's very ugly. But yeah, Sony MDR V6s or MDR 7506 are these like studio monitors, basically. They're my headphones. I've had a pair for about 12 years.
There's a picture of them on the Pinterest board, I believe.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. I'll try that. I'll
did you? I feel like you already added one, but
maybe I did. Yeah,
there were some headphones on there.
Yeah, and then Minolta Maxim 7000. This is a camera I had from this period as well. This was like one of the first cameras to have fully automatic everything, basically. Like it had automatic shutter, automatic like light adjustment, and all that. And yeah, and then my weirdest addition to this list is the Heckler & Koch P7 M13, which is a gun. But it looks like all these items. If you put them all in a row, it really tracks. Like all these things like are just black items, but they have leather, plastic, and metal components, and they're texturally very rich. Like the plastic will be flat, and the leather will be
touch them.
knurled. Yeah, you can really like you want to reach out and use.
No, I mean
them.
like you've actually seen these objects IRL and touched them.
Yes.
Okay.
Everything besides. Yeah, I've seen an E31 from this period in real life, and I like rolled down my window and complimented the person. We talked briefly. I own the V6s. I own my Ulta Maxim. I should have brought it in actually today.
And do you own the Heckler & Koch P7?
I do not. Those are expensive. Those are like they were only manufactured for a bit in Germany. But yeah, those are very, very pricey. But they also have like these nice red accents on them. Like the Maxim has those, and then the Heckler & Koch like. I don't know. I think that I'm very drawn to like small red accents. I think they're very urgent and interesting. I like them a lot.
Yeah. I once had this, actually I still have the shirt where the final button at the bottom is red.
Oh, yeah. I like that. That's good. Just a little thing.
Yeah. That's a good place to bring up how I recently learned that, the origin of the phrase, the devil's in the details actually comes from the phrase, God is in the details.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using that instead. It's so much more beautiful.
God is in the details.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think which one I thought came first. I don't know. I just kind of think of them both.
Well, you know who it's sort of ascribed to, but it definitely did not come from him. Mies van der Rohe.
Yeah, because he was always about the details.
Yeah.
So Yuppie cultural activities, like 80s Yuppie cultural activities.
What they did when they weren't working 14-hour days.
But still flexing on people. And so gyms and health clubs. They always use the term health clubs. I have this book on manners from the 80s. It's written by this woman who was like the woman who'd run all the events in the Kennedy White House, basically. But she wrote a book in the 80s about how to have a great social life, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know. My dad had it. I just took it from his library. And she talks about etiquette regarding health clubs. I'm like, what is that? It just means gym. Like, it just means gym. But I think gyms had this like bad, sweaty kind of connotation in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. Like when people pictured gym, they pictured the YMCA. And so that didn't really jive with the yuppie aesthetics.
I mean, the health clubs and like, higher end gyms, they'll have services like massages, in-house physical therapists sometimes even. Mm-hmm. So like there's more you're paying for. And yeah, the nicest gym I've been to is my current one.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, this is like, you can trace back like Equinox nowadays, owes to this kind of early 80s zhuzhi, like aesthetic, athletic culture.
I wonder if I went to one, if I'd be impressed or not, because I've avoided it because I actually like spend a lot of my money on health, like more than my rent even. Like I would be the type actually to maybe make the jump into that, but I haven't let myself even like go on a tour because I don't want to time
you
myself.
don't even want to know. Yeah,
I don't want to know
what's out there. Yeah, it's funny because I think that like CrossFit was likely a like rejection of this style of gym. Where they're like, oh, we're just in a shed, we're flipping tires around, like everything's rough.
No, CrossFit gyms are nice. I mean, that's the one I go to. Mm-hmm. It's Like my gym only has 100 members. I found out recently.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like oftentimes I'm the only one, or there's only one other person there. And there's a little sauna in the bathroom. I've never used it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like this is really the rise of kind of health culture in general. Like, yes, it started with like people going jogging in the 70s and stuff, but like the silent generation, like they wouldn't have been, you know, exercising after work or anything. That wasn't really a part
work
of
was their
culture.
exercise. They didn't have office jobs as often.
Yeah, but there were still bankers and stuff. Maybe they'd play some squash and racquetball.
There were
after
far fewer
in the 20s.
Far fewer
but,
bankers.
Like, yeah. I know, but this really made it so like it became like an opt-out system. Like you have to go to the gym.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I when I was in Rio de Janeiro researching for my thesis, I also did a second project for another class I was in on ethnography. And the other project I did was on like, I just looked at health in Brazil. So I went to like 6 different gyms in a week and like went to an exercise festival and was asking everyone about like health. And I basically figured out in a week, such a genius. Okay. But no, basically like the idea in Brazil of you need to exercise for health, that's a new thing. Before it was purely aesthetic. That's why, and Brazilians have been obsessed with being hot forever. It's like their thing. But
I think they want to believe it's a very like natural kind of like an easy sensuality, as you would say. But no, it takes a lot of work. It takes like, yeah.
But yeah, once Brazil started getting processed food from Nestle, people started to be like, I got to do this. Like I will die younger.
Fight this. Yeah. I gotta, yeah. Other like Yuppie activities, audio equipment pops up a lot. In American Psycho, there's of course the classic scene where he puts on, he like uses his hi-fi system as he's about to kill Jared Leto. Yeah. But in the Yuppie rap video, the titular Yuppie character uses his remote to turn on all of his various like cassette players and hi-fi stuff around there. It was just like a way to, you know, have someone over, exert your wealth on them, sip white wine, you know, and play a record.
Was this around when like music rooms were popularized?
Music rooms.
This is a thing that you'd see on like MTV Cribs a lot, where like the celebrity would be like, and here's my music room. Apparently there was like some sort of like Freakonomics-esque campaign where like piano makers decided or figured out that like the way to get Americans to buy more pianos is to popularize the idea of a music room. And so if you're wealthy, you'd want to have a room with a piano in it to entertain guests. But I don't know when that happened. I probably
it's like some light
80s.
astroturfing, like you convince people of that.
No, heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about a certain contemporary Yuppie activity?
Yeah. So to get ahead of ourselves before we get into the section on Yuppies in the modern day. So one of the things that I see Yuppies do all the time actually is they go on what are called like crawls, bar crawls. And at least here in Chicago, there's a big enough population of young professionals and dumb college kids that they actually have like events organized by event organizing companies, like the Mustache Crawl, or like there's a St. Patrick's Day one coming up. There's also like a pajama crawl, which I find especially distasteful, because I think there's this thing that I've seen popular, quote unquote, popular kids do this for a long time, where like, you know, when I was in middle school and high school, a lot of the popular girls would wear sweats and then a full face of makeup. Yeah. And it was like they were low effort, but still pretty. It was a power move. And I feel like oftentimes I see this across preppy people or yuppies all the time still, where like another example is just like when they go to Halloween parties, a lot of the times the guys will just get like a $20 banana or hot dog or taco or burrito costume. And it's just like, oh, look, I can do nothing and still be liked. And so I kind of feel like the pajama crawl is a bit like that. I've heard actually anecdotally from people that like many people find their future fiancés or husbands or wives on the pajama crawl, which is ridiculous because like you met your wife in a Cookie Monster costume.
Yeah, no, in Cookie Monster PJs. Yeah, so I just came back from a bar crawl this weekend. I was at one in Milwaukee with some friends of mine. And yeah, I'll admit to being an ill-behaved bar crawler at different points in my life. It's fun. But these are always things like planned by my friends, and we'll actually do costumes. So this weekend, the theme was prep versus goth, basically, or prep versus punk.
Were you prep?
Yeah, I forgot about the theme.
You didn't challenge yourself?
Yeah, I know. I forgot about the theme as I went up, and then everyone's like, "Oh, you dressed prep," and I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, yeah, I do every day.
You're already so pale. It would have been funny if you found a way to like convince them you were pale just by like not wearing any white makeup or something.
Yeah, I could have gone punk with it. Could have been fun, but yeah. I for some reason follow one of these like. I thought it was gonna be more of like a cool events in Chicago Instagram page, but it just turned out to be like a company that puts on these bar crawls kind of thing, and I just forget to unsubscribe. But it's very like they're definitely selling it to men is the idea. I think girls go of their own volition, and then these Instagram accounts like just post the hottest girls who went to the crawl and try and goad guys to buy tickets for it. But yeah, I don't know. To non-Chicagoans, Wrigleyville is the very bro-y part in terms of not just people who live there, but people who visit there to go to the bars. And that's where all these crawls are. And I just, I've been there on St. Patrick's Day. It's pretty grim, I guess.
Yeah. One time, my family, we had some distant cousins, very, very distant, who moved to like outside of Chicago because they were like in the army or something. But they hung out with my family a bit before they like confirmed the red flags and were like, we can't do this. But one time they came over to our house and they mentioned that they came into Chicago for St. Patrick's Day and went to Wrigleyville. And my sister like blurted out like, were you okay? Like, cause my family would just never, like, that's not our vibe or our scene. No, yeah. But we'll get into Wrigleyville more, once we get into the modern day Yuppies, and then Yuppies in a historical context.
Yeah. So a brief, like, I guess fitting the Yuppie into a larger sense of this, like this kind of fits into the old money, new money conversation here. Like Yuppies were seen as strivers, maybe they weren't from wealthy backgrounds. If they were from wealthy backgrounds, they were trying to, double it, multiply it. Basically, these were just people who had a very exponential view of life. I really hate seeing old money aesthetic like tossed around so much. It's like, I'm not even on TikTok, but like when reels and other Facebook things are pushed on me, like there's always just like old money outfits, and it's just like no one knows what they're talking about. Like I don't know, like this obsession with like stealth wealth and all these things just seem so, I don't know, no one's done like the actual homework about any kind of sartorial like research or understanding. I don't know, it just irritates me.
It's also just like in America there's so many people with money and in such random ways.
So the kind of like what happened to Yuppies, you found a good article on this.
Yeah, so I feel like I might have found this because I was looking up chavs, and somehow it was an article about Yuppies and chavs at the same time.
Quick note on chavs, because that word's almost like entirely fallen out of use. Yeah,
I would love to do an episode on that, but we're not British, and I really, really don't think it would work.
I'm trying to think of. Do we have British friends? I don't think so. No, I don't know. I'll find someone. I'll hire someone. Find a Brit off the street. I'll start going to like soccer matches at like pubs in the morning, and I'll track down a British expat. That'll work.
No, okay, I found this article that was somehow about both. It's just from someone's like random blog, but also link it in the show notes. But it's called JP Crocs, and he addressed the question, whatever happened to the Yuppie? And so while popular opinion suggested they died out due to the 1987 stock market crash, the author suggested the media simply got bored of them and that nothing happened to the Yuppie. They just became sidelined and ignored, left to carry on with their selfish, money-grabbing lifestyles in the serenity of obscurity. And time passed. Those Yuppies became older, and as positions above them became vacant, they got promoted. So basically, Yuppies didn't go away. It's simply the young part that went away from young urban professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whenever an identifiable like subculture fades away, like they kind of graft onto the larger culture, and like things that were specific about them just become like shared things to all of us, They get kind of absorbed into the great culture, I feel. And so I think there's just Yuppie things that we just take for granted nowadays. Kind of like what I was saying about the white wine and brie thing, if that would have been seen as pretentious in the past, but now that's just a standard thing to put out at a party.
Yeah.
We've all become, and now everyone goes to the gym, regardless of if they're a young urban professional or something. It feels like there's a larger fitness culture too. I
think it's also just though that like there's a period when like something's new where meaning's assigned to it, and that passes eventually. And so like these things like women's shoulder pads, they got talked about, and that's it.
And the conversation ended. There was nothing more to say. There's nothing more to do with them, kind of. Then they kind of make their exit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like all the very explicitly talking about yuppie stuff. Like I talk to my mom about this. I always like sneakily bring up whatever the week's podcast subject is up with my mom. Like, oh, I've just been thinking about this, and I pick her brain on it. And so I asked her about yuppies and stuff.
Do you think she's listened at all?
No.
Does she know you have one?
No.
Oh, good. Okay.
But she was saying like, oh yeah, there was a yuppie handbook. And yeah, I found that online. This was in the wave after the Preppy handbook, which was this tongue-in-cheek book written by this woman in New York, just about all the classic preppy clothing things and how to signal how preppy you are. And these spawned tons of imitators, including like the Yuppie handbook. And I think all of those are really generated, like the Yuppie rap thing in like 88, 89, after the crash. You could really make fun of Yuppies, and then people get bored of making fun of them. You get bored of talking about them, you get bored of making fun of them, and then the cultural conversation moves on. You try and find a new, like, identifiable cultural movement to yell at. I would say, I'm trying to think what it would be in the 90s. I know that once you get to the 2000s, you have hipsters to point at and be like,
it's not as fun, but I feel like in the 90s, it was like welfare queens and super predators. Yeah. It's not a fun one, but I feel like that's what like people
grunge,
were deriding.
That was, I don't know. I just think yuppies and hipsters go in such a good category of things that people wouldn't want to be called.
Pejorative.
Yeah, just pejorative subcultures where people like try and say that this is a cultural phenomenon that's happening, but everyone who could be said to participate in that refuses to acknowledge it, basically.
But that's the thing with like every youth movement is like, you don't want to call yourself a hipster. Yeah. You don't want to call it, I mean, I guess ravers want to call themselves ravers, but even like goths or people who just wear black, they like the vibe, but they don't want the label. But
is that the case? They don't gatekeep? I feel like goths would gatekeep.
There's always been the people who naturally arrive at an aesthetic, who participate, and they're part of it, but they don't like the label. And then there's the people who come later, find out about it too late. They become obsessed with the label, and they find a way to express the idea very purely. Yeah. But like they become
an enforcer type of person. Like they more clearly want to like enforce the rules.
Yeah. Of it. But in the docket, actually, I did write about how, in a way, yuppies can be thought of as like a corporate subculture, where they were like a contingent that entered into the corporate space together with a defined look that was visually distinct. And I don't think there's really been anything like that since, because in general, you have to conform to the standards of the workplace you're entering. But this was during a time when like boomers were the biggest generation. And so there's this phenomenon called a youth bulge. Have you heard of it? Mm-hmm. It's basically like when you're the biggest demographic in society, like it's oftentimes when like political change happens, like the 1960s pro-protest movements and things like that. But yeah, they were done protesting. That's actually something that like I wrote earlier. But basically like what made a person truly a yuppie is if like they didn't have a time when they were protesting. It was like straight from college into the workplace. Because for their predecessors, that was unheard of. Like you spent time finding yourself.
So I watched this one video from the 80s about, it was the cotillion yuppie thing. And one of the guys they interviewed there was like an older yuppie, I'd say. And he's like, yeah, I was in the protests in like 1969 and all that. And like, oh, well, what do you do now? And he's like, I work in mergers and acquisitions on Wall Street. And he was obviously like, he knows what that sounds like. He's not unaware of that. So I think there was like, it's a big enough age span that there could be like, I think kind of two types of yuppies. Those who experienced the counterculture and walked away from it, and those who only looked at the counterculture and walked away from it.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. So yuppies in a modern context. So you wrote that you see yourself as a yuppie? Yeah,
I think you and I might have even slightly like different usages and understandings of the term as it comes nowadays. Yeah. Like, because obviously it's not 1985 anymore. We're not in the peak of the yuppie. No one dresses like that. Even though I might, now that I've looked at the Pinterest board. Yeah. I don't know. So my winter coats are definitely from the 80s and 90s. And they do kind of like billow like that. But I don't really know how to be a summer yuppie. That's coming around the corner.
I realized recently that literally the only coats I really like are like snowboarder jackets. Those are the only ones that do it for me.
Mm-hmm. I have like this double-breasted wool coat that I love. But I don't know if there's any days for that left, weather-wise. Yeah. I see myself as a yuppie just because, like, I don't know. I work a professional job. Like even if I'm covered in like a light layer of drywall dust all the time, I like wearing nice clothes. I like going to restaurants. I drive a black Volvo. That's a yuppie thing. I live in a small apartment in a desirable area, and I intend on never moving to the suburbs. Like I think I have yuppie traits. I think I'm stretching the term a little bit, basically, because I don't work in finance or anything.
Yeah, I think that one of the good things about Yuppies in the 80s was that they revitalized cities. Yeah. You know, I think a fair number of them grew up in the suburbs. Their parents never thought they would go to the city, and then they did, kind of as like a, you know, you just do the opposite of what your parents do. Yeah. But yeah, one of the good things about them is that they were the first to like make cities desirable again. Gentrification is contentious. We, on this podcast, we generally think that like the way to address gentrification is just to build more housing and make more units available. That's the way to not price people out. I personally like don't think that like an area getting more wealthy residents is inherently bad as long as, you know, they get their condos, which everyone hates. But like if they get those, they don't then have to like buy out a single family home that's in the area. Yeah. But yeah, that's the good thing about them. They do have interpersonal lives that are hollow and chaotic because they dedicated themselves to work, and they, in their like social interactions as narcissists, they just like analysis from others. They like being ingratiated. They like don't actually form like real connections with people. But what they did for the urban environment, that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm saying is like, I want to retain the good elements of the yuppie living in a city and then reject the like corporate greed, climber, careerism, hollowness of things. But I think that one thing we can also kind of like about the yuppies, even if their motivations culturally weren't always good, because they would be involved in like art scenes, they'd go to galleries, they'd you know like go to the operas, and they'd be involved in these like higher minded cultural things. They read books, they did that. It was largely in a performative kind of sense, but I think you and I agree that like any kind of self betterment in an intellectual way is usually a pretty good exercise. Like even if it's not coming from the best kind of area, like as long as you're still reading the book and it's causing some kind of change for you, it's better than anti-intellectualism, I think.
You can't always wait for everything to happen for the right reasons. Sometimes like good things happen for indirect reasons, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think nowadays we use the term like a finance bro and a tech bro. You know, these are the modern like corporate climbers that we identify. And so the finance bro is, you know, dress shirt, Patagonia fleece. I imagine the pants being like some kind of technical chino, like a stretch khaki kind of deal. That's usually pretty tight. And then tech bros, they can wear anything because they have no dress codes at their jobs. They can wear a hoodie or something, or they can wear like really stupid streetwear to show how much like tech salary they wear.
Hood by air.
And all, yes, hood by air stuff. Yes. So what do you associate with the modern day yuppies?
I associate them with the following traits. So white, high salaries, ambitions of upward mobility, normie interests like sports and the office, basic wardrobes with Patagonia North Face, kids and large dogs, largely as status symbols, and the awkward white people smile where they like purse their lips and don't look like they're actually happy. But I think of these, the one that I want to just get out the gate and just immediately pin down is just The Office.
The show The Office.
Do not like it. And I think that it's kind of like lowest common denominator where it's like supposed to appeal to everyone. But in that process, it's kind of like SNL where it's like when like you're watching something where either the comedian or the show, it just presents itself in this way where it just thinks it's inherently funny. Do you get that? It's just
you don't like its confidence? You don't like that it's like...
No, it's just a certain type of like intellectual hubris. I don't think it's coming across, but...
No. I kind of get you. Like, especially like the kind of, I don't know, like network sitcom, like, you know, this is like the highest level of success if you're like a comedy writer. These are guys who went to Harvard for like writing comedy, that whole type of thing, like the classic like Jewish writer's room kind of deal as well. I don't know. Part of me kind of respects that. Like I like stuff by Conan O'Brien. He's like the ultimate in that. He came from like a wealthy background. He went to Harvard. He's just very like good at comedy in like a very almost studied, like a natural yet mechanical kind of way. Like qualified, like kind of like a doctor in some weird way.
Yeah.
And I just kind of respect that. So I think I don't have that kind of like, but then SNL rubs me the wrong way. And that's drawing from the same pool of people. Like the people who would be on like writing for Conan would also be writers for SNL and that kind of stuff. So I think I'm maybe more format dependent, but
But yeah, I used to explain it to my sister in this one way where I would like imagine this hypothetical scenario. So I would tell my sister, okay, let's say we go into the home of someone in Wrigleyville. We enter the door, sports are playing on every TV in the house. They then ask us as guests if we like sports, and I, being me, mention, no, not really. And then they immediately turn on the Office without asking. It's just like
this invented scenario, but it serves a purpose.
It's what they do. I also had this like high school teacher, a math teacher, who she made us watch The Office 3 times in class as like a treat. And but she was just like this she really embodies to me what like a yuppie is in the modern sense, and especially a Chicago sense. So she went to Notre Dame, which is a Big Ten school. Yeah. And I feel like for me, like yuppies in Chicago always go to Big Ten schools.
Yeah, I think New York yuppies went Ivy League or Ivy League adjacent, but I feel like Chicago yuppies went to Big Ten state schools for their, finance and business programs.
Because the Big Ten state schools are largely Midwestern, and Chicago is the capital of the Midwest. Yeah, you could just tell she just really, really wanted a husband. Like she mentioned in class more than once that like she was engaged because... I mean,
she's like a Kathy type figure, like from the comic strip. Whenever I see her as like a hapless, frenetic, unmarried woman.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she was pretty though. Like I heard that in the class I was in, a guy asked her out at one point, and apparently it happened in another class too. Like all the boys had crushes on her, but she didn't like me, which was understandable. But anyways, so yuppies in the modern sense, I think that all of these traits like are largely, an attempt to keep up with the Joneses, which is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, just because my peer group, we like the intellectual diversity amongst ourselves. Like we are not aiming to have like a standard model of a group member.
Yeah.
And so, but I see that with like other people, it's for me, like friendship is actually out of love. Like I'm interested in other people. Mm-hmm. It's not about having a barometer to surpass. My peers are my peers. They're not like something I want to beat.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Like people naturally kind of clump together socioeconomically. Like shift workers hang out with shift workers. These things are kind of like very nuts and bolts sometimes. Like if you have the similar amounts of money, like you're going to live in similar areas. Like these things kind of self-sort. But I think we have this very this group of friends that's been pulled from a lot of different directions. So like I hope there isn't like, any kind of snobbery and stuff.
I mean, but for me, like growing up, it was like, okay, at lunch, if I wanted to sit with all of the other gay guys, there's none. And so I never really I always like went between groups, and like they would self-sort in different ways. But I ultimately, by junior year, I was like eating alone because I didn't like that. I didn't want to just be the compromise and be the token person. And I've always been fascinated with others, and I like what's different about them, not what's the same.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I was talking to a friend of ours about this. Like, I don't know if I want to I don't want to see myself as an outsider, but I've felt like it so many times. It just does feel like a theme, but I never want to develop that complex where you're just like, oh, I'm always different from these normies. It's not like that. It's just, I don't know. I feel like I've had, I was telling some stories on Friday night, and someone said to me, like, it seems like a theme in your life is people pointing at you and calling you out for being different. And I was like, I think it's true. It's like happened. Like, it's a very explicit thing where people are just like, oh, we're like some certain thing, and you aren't like that. Like, and it's often in like a nice or like a, hey, that's interesting kind of way. It's not people being like, get the hell out of here.
I mean, when it happens in a mean way to me, it's usually like people just forget. It's like, oh, he doesn't like concerts. It's like, have you invited me to one? No, you haven't. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. With keeping up with the Joneses, I feel like there's also a reverse snobbery kind of thing. Maybe I'm projecting in this, but I think that sometimes I don't know, I'll go to some events in like pretty alt spaces and stuff with our friends, and I don't look alt at all. And people I think I always try and be warm and inviting to people. And I think that makes it worse. I think that like when you show up looking very trad and all that, and then you ask someone, oh, how was your week? Like, oh, do you live around here? What do you do for work? Like these very like normie kind of like questions, which I genuinely like asking people and I want to know the answers to. But if you ask someone that and they have like face tattoos and stuff, they just hate you more. Like they're just like, no, you are the establishment. Like we have nothing in common. I think they're also like, oh, he's probably judging me right now, is what they're always thinking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, probably lightly. Like
that's what usually happens to me with guys that like smoke weed. They like are like, you probably are judging me so hard. And it's like, no, chill out. I don't even care. But
aren't you probably a little bit?
Not really. No.
Okay.
But no, I think that maybe those people that you get those negative vibes from, it could also be like, you seem very mentally healthy. I think I am too. I've never really been depressed or anything. I'm pretty good, but like, it might be that like sometimes people are just so miserable that they like people's confidence makes them insecure. Maybe.
I don't know. I remember hanging out with one of our friends and I was saying something to the effect of like, oh, you probably wouldn't guess it, but like I have had some pretty like difficult things in my past. She's like, no, I could guess that pretty freely is what she said.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I'm not hiding it as well as I thought. So I think you might be unique in thinking that. I think I might give off a...
No, I mean, I guess actually it's usually that people just have a strong reaction when they learn that I'm like not depressed or I'm not like for example, a lot of times people think I don't believe in God because I don't know. Maybe this could be between you and me. This could be like us having dead parents kind of things. I think people make assumptions. Like once you have a dead parent, they're like, oh, like, you probably don't believe in God, things like that. I think that's a pretty standard thing. That was, when my dad died, like we had to go to synagogue for something. It wasn't like for his funeral. It was just us going back to synagogue. And my sister was all mad about it. And she was just like, why? Obviously God's not real because dad's dead. And I just like yelled at her. I was just a kid at the time. I was like, that's so boring. I just told her that. I'm like, you think you're the first person to lose a parent and be like, oh, God's not real. Like if you're going to arrive at like not believing in God, you should come to it through some like original, like lifelong search for meaning and all that. Not just like the first time a parent dies. Like, well, obviously we live in a godless world. Yeah. Also people have free will. I always think that's important. It's like, I do think that some things happen for a reason, but also we have the ability to enact things on the physical world. And sometimes that gets in the way of like what destiny was meant to be or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So the particular flavor, I think, of modern day yuppies in Chicago, I once had a terse discussion with someone I was working with at SAAC when I was a tour guide, where she is from New York in Brooklyn and Park Slope, which people from New York will know that translates into just like an AKA hipster area. It was one of the areas of Brooklyn to become the most desirable. And so she was telling me like, to her, the word yuppie always implies a creative career. Like say they're a graphic designer or an architect. Yeah. And for me, I was explaining that no, it pretty much always means finance and they're boring. But then she like pulled up a definition online that said like the yuppies often
This does sound like a terse discussion. You're right. When people are pulling up online definitions, I think a lot of decorum has been lost. And you guys aren't having fun in that conversation. I think she's wrong about that. I mean, when people talk about gentrification and displacement, they'll often say that like, artists are the shock troops first. Like first the artists go there because it's cheap. And then the interstitial period is like the graphic designers and the like creative professionals. But then it gets too expensive for them and they get priced out. And then the only people who can live there are bankers or like finance guys. Yeah,
I oftentimes tell people they should listen to me when I find a neighborhood beautiful, even when it's like run down, because like I have the eye, I can tell.
Well, on that eye for things, I was driving a friend of ours back on Friday night from Ravenswood and then dropping her off at the train over east, and we're driving through Ravenswood, which has been gentrified or whatever since the 90s, 80s, 90s. People started buying up. I read some crazy stat that they've lost like. They've built so much and they've lost 10% of housing units because of how many 2 flats have become single family homes and stuff. Like it's really like, I don't know, it's been happening for a bit and it looks so nice around there. And our friend Julie was saying like, I can't picture what this was like pre-gentrification. But how rough could it have looked? Like these houses are beautiful. Like there's no way they were all like beyond recognition before, especially the older ones. There's like wide setbacks. Like this is a nice place. How was this ever like flying under the radar? I just like, God, if I could have been there in the 80s, man. Yeah. With cash flow.
I mean, even if you look on Google Maps today of like Inglewood, which is perceived as Chicago's most violent neighborhood, it's like there's graystones. Yeah. The buildings that are there are beautiful. It doesn't really look that different than a lot of other neighborhoods besides the empty lots. I don't know, though. I think that there's a regionalism to like yuppies across places, I'm sure. Because when you were talking earlier about yuppies in LA, the thing that popped in my head were like people who worked for like record companies.
Yeah.
Because I've seen like documentaries or little clips where those people who were like monumental in like getting a certain artist or a certain genre like famous, like they had like a vibe that was very yuppie, but in a different way.
Yeah, it was like, and I think in New York you'd get like gallerists. I think that would be a type of yuppie, a type of creative yuppie there. I think it would be, not to like genderize everything, but it's like, you know, guy who works in finance and his gallerist wife. You know, that would be a yuppie
Curator
power
wife
couple. Yeah.
at a museum.
Yeah. And I think that like with the modern day tech bro and all that, I feel like his counterpart is like the marketing or HR girly, basically. Finance bro, marketing,
or nonprofit.
HR girly, or nonprofit.
1/3 of the income.
Yeah. Or if she, like, not to say the girls can't be finance bros, then she's like a finance consulting girl boss, you know, that type as well. I like briefly went on a few dates with a girl, that type of vibe. It was a lot to deal with, is what I'd say.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just that very like, I don't know.
Yeah. Every time I've tried to date yuppies, I've had trouble. I think I view yuppies in a more antagonistic way than you do, partly because of my childhood, which we'll get to in the next part. But even when I would date like yuppie guys, it was usually from Hinge. And it was
most
always
dignified of the dating apps. Yes.
It was always so frustrating. It's like they jump the gun so quickly with like, they just don't take the time to get to know someone. I think because they don't have that much of a personality. So they don't realize like how much is behind the first date. It's like, there's so much to get to. I did not even like, you don't even know.
Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, the life cycle of your neighborhood, like how does that fit into, what do you think, the yuppie conversation, kind of gentrification and all that? Because your family came there when? So
as mentioned, I grew up in Ravenswood, specifically Ravenswood Garden, which is the neighborhood on the Chicago River. Because there's another Ravenswood. There's another Ravenswood to the east. I was the Ravenswood to the west. And so my dad grew up in Chicago. My mom came to Chicago with a group of nuns. They lived in some random buildings for a while, one of which actually is like a Chicago landmark now. And then they got 3 kids, and then my mom got pregnant, and then they were like, okay, we need to buy a house. And so they were looking around and they found this place on the river. And when we moved there, it was like relatively safe. I mean, there were other families growing up on the block, but it was still the 90s. Like, I'm pretty sure that like the park next door, there's a bridge underneath. I think that was like a Aladdin King meeting area. So there's still things like that going on. But, you know, like I grew up with like the front doors unlocked. The park was 3 doors down. It was actually like a lot more of a quintessential American childhood than like I remember having. But with my family growing up, like towards the later half of when we owned the house, we sold it in like 2010. There started to be people moving into the area where like the person next door was like an architect, and they spent like $40,000 in their garden.
Oh, wow.
And we as a household would like refer to other people as yuppies in a very pejorative, visceral way. Yeah. And so, for example, like there was this mural that went up on a cafe nearby called Beards and Bagels, where it was this mural where all the people had closed eyes, so we were annoyed. And we went and we like super glued googly eyes on all the people. And then like as we were doing it, like this yuppie couple was walking up to us. We went on a corner and we came back and they had ripped off all the eyes. So like they were barely on it for even a moment.
Oh my God.
Yeah, things like that with like how we would perceive people in the neighborhood. And yeah, it was actually in a gentrification way, because you kind of commented this in the docket, which I think is true, where it's like the neighborhood was not like, it was not in a state of decline, or like, it was not like violent. It was just, it went up another income bracket of like my family, we had money, although it was split in many like different directions with so many dependents, but like, yeah, what my neighbors were trying to achieve with like a $40,000 garden, or like, you know, I walk by my childhood home as often as I can, but like so many of the houses have like those garages underneath the home. Like,
yeah, those are expensive.
Yeah,
those are really expensive to build.
Yeah.
It's this just shows where like the whole gentrifier displacement like dichotomy or whatever just breaks down, because people could even like see your parents moving out there, as your parents had college degrees, right? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like this would have been like Ravenswood Garden would have been like a white ethnic working class area, you know? So like maybe your parents could be seen as incoming yuppies. The first wave, the shock troops with the creative careers, not that high earning, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But then the
my
second
dad being
wave,
a photographer, especially.
yeah. But then the second wave is these people building the garages and the like fancy gardens and all that. Yeah. So it just like, I don't know. And so you can be displaced by like an incoming wave of people, but
yeah,
I don't know.
But yeah, sorry, I'm talking.
You said that like when in your neighborhood that like there was like a little like a tree, like a forest in there that you had growing up.
Yeah. So 3 doors down, there's a park. It's called Jacob's Park. It's like, it's not that big of a lot, but next door there is this area that like, it was just woods, you know, because it's along the river, like in between the brown line, the tracks, and like where this park was, there was just a strip of forest. And so there were like mulberry trees and like you'd see deer there sometimes. It was actually like a wild area, but like now when I walk by my home every time, that has just been turned into a lawn with 4 pine trees.
Oh.
And it's like, when I mean lawn, I just mean it's just grass. It's like, why? I don't actually get it. It's like, it looked fine. It looked cool that it was a forest. Like, I don't get why they needed to do that. Yeah. But that's actually me sounding a bit like a NIMBY.
Yeah. A little bit, but it, like also what people like suburbanified that little area. I think that kind of like lawn approach of like, oh, it's a little like wild, like this tree area. We need to like chop that down. And I actually don't, that seems like something an earlier wave, yuppie, gentrifier, whatever, would do, is a kind of like bring the suburbs to the city. I think that was the first approach. Yeah. I think people nowadays, like, I don't know, I had a project in Ravenswood for the longest time. And so I'd see these like very well-heeled couples around with very expensive like baby strollers and all that. And I think they would, if they moved the area like nowadays, people wouldn't like tear down those trees and stuff. They'd love to have a wild little crunchy granola place for their kids to play around. I think about this, I don't know, say what you will about the New Yorker, and if it's a very like standard lib magazine, but I still read it. I still get a subscription from my grandparents. And there was a cover called it's called A House Divided. And so it shows like a single, like basically townhouse, and it's split down the middle. There's one resident on the left side and one resident on the right side, and it's politically left and right as well. Yeah. So the guy on the left side has kept his house very like colorful and kind of craftsman-y a little bit, like painted different colors. He's hanging out in a hammock. His lawn is all like native pollinators. They have like a "in this house we believe science is real" type of sign and all that. And it's all very like crunchy and free flowing. And then on the right side, it's a guy who his house is a little more like modern farmhouse and grayish, like, and it has like a manicured lawn with a few potted plants separately. I think those are like,
and an American flag, I think.
Well, the thing is, they gave both of them American flags.
Oh, okay.
Which I don't think is accurate. I don't think that like lefty people, like really lefty people, put up American flags anymore. But yeah, and then of course on the right side, there's like a, you know, thin blue line flag and all that. But yeah, so I think that like even, I don't know where I'm exactly going with this, but I think there's like 2 ways to aesthetically gentrify a place. You can flatten, pave over, you know, bring order, or you can kind of, there's a certain sensibility, I think, on the political left of like an appeal to nature kind of way, that we want these wild, natural things. And I think that used to be a more conservative trait. You know, it seems like small c conservatives nowadays, they're like more afraid of nature than city dwellers in a way. Like they want to put it in order. I don't know.
Yeah, like they want to go to these, I see all these videos where there's people in cars who like, they'll have like a cup of food and then the animal goes in the car and everyone freaks out. That definitely that's more of a conservative thing.
I always thought it was so strange that like the conservative way, the small c conservative cultural way to engage with nature is like a lot of like driving and ATVs and these mechanical like motorized things, these labor saving devices, boating, all that stuff. And then I feel like the left way, liberal way to do this stuff is like REI style, like hiking, mountain biking, these like much more physical and more stripped down and more nature focused, as opposed to just taking a gas engine and like ripping up a place. Basically, I don't know. It seems like we missed the words. You would
Yeah.
think based on the term conservation that the lefty approach would be more in line.
I mean, I think it might just be because conservatives live in areas that are already rural, and so they're used to it. They need to add stuff to it to enjoy it. Whereas liberals
live in cities. And then they just go out to briefly experience.
For me, I only leave the city, say like 5 times a year, maybe 10.
Dude, me too. It's bad.
Yeah.
And I have a car. For you, it makes sense. Like,
yeah.
But for me, it's like, I don't know, I just don't really feel
yeah. If I were to go to like a picnic area in a suburb, I would be like, wow, this is more nature than I'm used to.
Yeah. I think we should go to the forest preserves. We should take the metro out to the forest preserves. I think that could be cool. You know?
What are those?
The forest. Oh my God.
Like you mean Peterson Park? So I can yell at you.
The forest preserves is the Cook County Forest Preserves is this whole system of like forests, like kind of on the outskirts
like
of the city.
Woods?
Like Labaugh Woods.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
It was part of this wider scheme to like preserve all the different, like the prairies, the swamps, the forests, all that. But when it came to like actual politics, people only want forests. Like no one actually sees the like desire. Like people say, and speaking of conservation and stuff, people say they want to conserve nature as it is, but then you show them a swamp and they're like, well, can you turn this into a forest I could have a picnic in? And so that's like what we did in a lot of spaces.
Yeah.
But I get that. I don't know. Like what appeal does a swamp have?
I mean, America at one point had malaria. The swamp draining projects they did do result in a better quality of life because we have less mosquito-borne diseases now. But yeah, we got pretty far off topic for yuppies in the modern sense. But one other thing that's important to bring up is that specifically in Chicago, yuppies live off of the brown line. So yeah, we have 8 lines here, and there's wealth in different pockets around all the different lines to a degree. But
there's
the brown
no
line
bad
is like,
neighborhoods on the brown line is what it is. Like it's the floor is very high. Like there are nicer neighborhoods on the red line, I guess, if you think that Gold Coast is a part of the red line division stop over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no bad neighborhoods on the brown. At the very, very end of the brown line is probably the most down market, I guess.
Kedzie especially. Kedzie was a stop that I would use to get to my high school or from my high school. And when I was in school, there was this article that everyone was sharing on Facebook amongst classmates where like someone had gotten attacked but with a machete waiting at the Kedzie stop. But yeah, that I think is like the least nice looking, but pretty much all the stops are like beautiful.
Yeah, no. And then the brown line crosses the river twice.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful as well. I took the brown line down to Union Station to get up to Milwaukee. And I don't know, I got strangely emotional when the train crosses the river and you see all the buildings and stuff. It's just, God, like what a great view of a city.
Yeah.
No. So much better than just driving across a bridge in your car where you have to focus on stuff.
Yeah. And even in marketing, I mean, so many times the best shot to show that like Chicago is a city is just along the river with all of the skyscrapers and then the single train route going over the river. It like that I think is like the symbol of like urbanism is like just like a train, especially above ground, because then you can see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that one of my projects has a view of the river, the lake, but also like I've had people tell me this in like luxury housing, like different real estate agents and stuff, but people used to want more pure lake views back in the day. Like they just wanted to directly face the lake and be as high up as they could. And now people kind of like the city views. Like you never want to be directly up against a building. Everyone hates that. Like prices reflect that, you know, being on a lower floor in a condo next to other condos. But like, it's just fun to look at the city. It's like I don't know, the lake does change over the year and it's like really beautiful to look at, but like at the city, you can just always look at things. And all of my clients I've found always seem to keep binoculars of some kind, like next to their couch. It's just like a thing for people in high rises. They don't even try and hide it, basically. It's just, everyone's curious, you know?
Yeah. Unless you walk around butt naked all the time. No. Did you see that article recently in the
about
news?
The guy in River North? Yeah, that guy should be, I was... Yeah, so he's this guy, this like older gentleman living in a River North high rise, and he just walk around naked all the time. And it wasn't just that, because like he would hold up signs to women and stuff. He'd be like, "Hey, come over."
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that really changed the article for me. But yeah, people just got together and like shamed him. People like approached him as he left his building and stuff. Yeah. Once I heard about the signs thing, I was like, yeah, no, this guy should be chased. But like,
you should watch out because like gay guys would be the first to show up.
But yeah, I think he cooled down ever since the kind of thing. But it's like, yeah, it's so funny. Like, cause it's just a ridiculous kind of situation that it even got elevated to like local news. Like there was a write up in WGN or whatever. But like it would suck to be just like vacuum. You look over and there's just a guy dong out.
Yeah. And then one other thing about just like yuppies in the modern day, I think, is the word professional or professionalism. So I also view that in like a pejorative way, along with the word yuppie, where like when I first started getting on dating apps or dating sites, when I would see a guy include in his bio that like he's professional or like also seeking professional, I would always get like viscerally pissed off and confused. No, because like to me it was like being a professional is a bad thing. Like
why would that? Why?
It's just a thing with like inner city kids. It's like it's one of those things where it's like it just I mean it wasn't the case for people in my high school, but like I grew up more like
working class, labor class, like what?
No,
if not professional, like
no, it was just okay. My dad was a professional photographer. He was making a lot of money, but I mean, my mom died. We lost the house. It's like I kind of experienced like different social classes in my youth, and the word professional though, I linked it directly to yuppies, and both of those things were just pejorative terms. Where it's like, why would you want to be perceived in that way? I can't even articulate it. It's just like, it was the ideology in my household, aversion in my community, things like that. Well, it's like
in my community, in the Jewish community, the goal is to be a professional. That's like all we set up our kids for. Like there's a wide variety of things you can be under professional, as long as you're a doctor, lawyer, or business executive. But even, I don't know, I've had a complex a little bit about not being a professional. When I worked for a small insurance restoration company and I was just wearing like a t-shirt and work pants every day and like driving a truck, and they'd give me all the trash at the end of the day and I'd have to drive up to a dumpster and unload all the trash into the dumpster. Like at the end of every, like I'd like be sending emails and doing management stuff all day, but I ended every day as a trash hauler basically. I was like, am I even a professional anymore? Like I realized I could just wear like baseball caps at work. You know, I wouldn't have to do my hair or anything. And I'm like, is this how it happens? I slowly stopped being a professional. Like I had a job where I was like wearing an ironed shirt every day. Yeah. And then now that I'm back on the other side of that and I am feeling very professional.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I'd be lying if I wasn't one.
Yeah. I mean, I learned recently that the work I do just became classifiable as professional. I reached out to HR because like there was a promotion I was interested in. But apparently I've been a librarian for less than a year, and all of the work I did before that is considered paraprofessional library experience. Even though like I was doing the same things as a librarian for a long time, but basically under this definition for this promotion, I learned that like I am only now doing professional work.
In my mind, you have a master's degree. Like, you know, like that feels pretty professional to me.
I guess so.
I don't know why whenever I think of things that aren't, I remember my mom asked me this. She's like, would you date someone who wasn't a professional? She said that. And I don't know. The thought experiment for me is just like, I always think hairdresser. I brought that up earlier, but it's like, I think I could fully date a hairdresser. Like I don't know. As much as I was saying, like, I hate the careerism of yuppies and all that. Like I want someone with a little bit of like, I don't know, if you truly, truly hate your job and it's a dead end job and all that, that's going to seep into other parts of your life. But like, I was talking to a friend over the weekend he was a teacher and then he just fell into like working for a carpet cleaning business, like in the office, and he loves it. It's like this like wonderful family owned business and people are so happy when you clean their carpets, and he like goes out there, finds business, the crews they have him working there for like 20 years. Like, I don't know. That's like, and if that doesn't count as professional, I don't care. Like that's what I care about more versus like working for some kind of like, you know, dead end corporate.
It's also like the money thing too, where it's like, there's so many ways to make money in the US, and like you might perceive that someone is a certain social class, but like in reality, they're making way more than you think. Yeah.
It's a class like plumbers making $200K, that kind of stuff. Like even if they don't get all the cultural respect and all that, like what does it matter? Their houses are very nice. I'm always surprised. Like, we are doing some kind of project with this giant chandelier we were getting rid of. And this one electrician's like, oh, I'll take it. I have 20-foot ceilings. I was like, cool. Like, And then I think that like, when my client gave me like $600 worth of wine, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to put this. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, not only do I not have a wine fridge, like I have an apartment-sized fridge too. Like I have no space in my tiny studio apartment, and I had to very politely kind of like navigate that. But
yeah. And I guess over the course of this episode, I mean, when I was single, I'd get frustrated just like everyone else. The dating market just sucks for everyone. No one likes it. But yeah, I've been realizing lately that like it wasn't that those yuppies rejected me based off of like, I mean, I think it was a bit sometimes based off of a perceived imbalance over like our potential futures or something. But it was a lot of it, I think, was just that they're simple and I had too much to say. And I think that's okay. Yes. I think that's all right.
I can see that. But yeah, so thoughts on Yuppies?
That was fun. I feel like I got very personal. But
yeah, interestingly so, because it is, I don't know. I didn't know where this episode was going to, I thought it was going to be more fashion, then ended up being kind of urbanist, but it's like, it definitely touches on like, I think the stage in life that we're in as like late 20s guys, like it feels like everything is kind of about like this very early point in our careers and all that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't imagine myself having a lifelong library career just because that's what most librarians do. And it's sad when they retire. It's just like, I don't want to look forward to things ending. That's not what you're supposed to do in life.
No. Yeah. I think you might be meant for better things. Nothing against library science or any of that, but I think it could attract a very like cozy, not that you're some crazy striver or something, but I think you can get too settled in library stuff and then just check your watch and 40 years have gone by and you're retiring.
Yeah. No, I'll be there for 2 years for sure. They're paying for the master's I just got. But yeah, I think with a lot of episodes, I come at things from a bit more of a critical negative angle, including this one where like I had this visceral childhood aversion to yuppies and professional people.
And where I'm just like, oh man, it'd be cool to wear an Armani suit.
Yes. Yeah. No, part of me wanted to do this episode in part despite all those PMC guys that ghosted me.
Yeah, revenge.
But no, actually...
all those marketing girlies who left me on red.
Yeah. No, I'm good. Life is good. I don't have to be so angry anymore. I let it go.
Yeah. A very cathartic episode.
Yeah. But yeah, yuppies still exist from our perspective. Probably don't call them that, but at least now you have the word buzzing in your head.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think everyone should look at the Pinterest board. I think it's a really good one. I might even add some more stuff before we post the episode too, just because it was a lot of fun. I don't know. Pinterest. I think more straight guys should get on Pinterest. I don't think that women and gays should be having all the fun.
I would have never gotten on that except for this podcast, honestly.
We use it in design build. We set up the clients with a Pinterest thing and it's how the designers like share inspiration and stuff like that. Yeah, nice.
One final thing to ask out of desperation. I feel like I only ever want to ask this once. It's cool to see ratings and reviews. So if you feel like doing a review on like Apple or whatever, we are getting listeners. I have no idea who half of you are. I'd be interested to just hear some feedback.
Yeah. And check out the Instagram page as
True.
well. We have that too.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.